Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Mikkel Thorup, and this is the Expat Money Show. Today's guest is a firebrand for freedom, an independent journalist, podcast host, and a relentless critic of government overreach. She is the host of the You're the Voice podcast, where she pulls back the curtain on state propaganda, monetary censorship, and the global control regime. She's a freedom maximalist and Bitcoin true believer, writing for Bitcoin Magazine, Zero Hedge, and international outlets, reaching audiences who are sick of being lied to. Sounds familiar, right? Please welcome to the show, Efrat Fenigson. Efrat, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Mikhail. Good to
My
speak to you again.
pleasure. I'm really excited about this one. We had a chance to spend time together in Prague last year or the year before, or maybe both years. I can't remember. We were both speakers at an event and we were on a panel discussion before. And I have to be honest, I didn't know you or your work before I got on that panel. And I was like, oh my God, this woman is amazing. I sat next to you and I was like blown away. And I was like, she's my new best friend. I need to get to know her. I need to know more about your work. And now we've been talking back and forth for a while, and I've been following a little bit about what you've done. And I had an opportunity to go on your amazing podcast, and now you get to come on mine. So I've got 1,001 questions for you today, but maybe we'll just start off. How did you get into this line of work? Tell us a little bit about your backstory.
All right. So I started as a computer programmer. I have graduated with a Bachelor of Science, a computer science degree, and worked as a programmer for a few years when I understood that what I wanted to do is actually create the conversation and the story around the technology instead of the technology itself. So I then found my way into marketing and business development in tech, and I had been working in that space for close to 20 years. And recently, around 2022, I've decided to embark on a new path and to leave my old corporate life as a chief marketing officer of startups and global companies all around the world. And I've decided to become a journalist and have a podcast because I felt like the gap in the media is so large, and the stuff that we are being told is so partial or wrong or just full of lies. And so I felt that urge to fill that gap and become part of what's called today the alternative media. And, that was at the same time where I was discovering Bitcoin, more or less 2022, which is a decentralized technology. And so I was kind of looking at how I can decentralize more and more of my life. And so, you and I spoke on my podcast about the fact that I have a second citizenship as well. So that's like a type of decentralization for me. I also decentralize my money. I decentralize my media. So I have so many different channels and platforms. And I try to create content, even if it's one platform, then repurpose it everywhere else. So even if I'm censored, it's very hard to take down all of my content in all of my channels. So I try to live a life that is as decentralized as possible in various different ways. Also in terms of health, this is another topic. COVID really brought that change for me. And so since COVID, I was really eager to learn as much as I can about the allopathic medicine versus what's called today the alternative medicine, which is, I think, the real medicine, right? And then try to have a decentralized lifestyle as much as possible in terms of the food and the products that I bring into my body and my life. So yeah, I think that's a really great way of framing the change that I had gone through. I really decided to just dedicate my life to be of service of humanity and create information and whether it's articles or podcast episodes or videos or anything I can, or do public speaking, and try and spread the message about the monetary system, about the truth in health, about different types of topics that are really close to my heart. So yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I think COVID was a huge mistake on the globalist agenda because what it ended up doing was waking up so many people. And once there was something that they could so clearly point to as just an absolute fabrication on every level, and people realized that they were being lied to. And then it's like, wow, if I'm being lied to about this, what else am I being lied to? And then they started asking so many questions. Because you mentioned, okay, the monetary system and education and media and health and food and all of these things. And it's like all of these people have now seen one thing and now gone down the rabbit hole on multiple. And it's like, wow, there is a lot of lies out there. And, you know,
And to be honest,
depending
it's
on
not easy because you get overwhelmed when you realize
definitely.
that there is so much you need to unlearn and relearn. So,
Well, mine is a little bit different because I left school at 12 years old because I was like, ooh, public education, this is a scam. And that was kind of like the beginning of my rabbit hole because of dyslexia and all of these types of things that I went through. But I think that I think I was like one in a billion. I don't think anybody was coming to realizations of what a big scam everything was at such a young age. I think at the last 5 years, it's just been a huge awakening of people who went, holy moly, there's a lot that I don't understand. There's a lot that doesn't make sense. And there's a lot, as we said, that people are being lied to. And so it's very interesting that you came in from one side and now are looking at so many different aspects of it.
yeah, absolutely. And I really cherish and acknowledge those people that are like following me on all the different platforms and asking questions because they're asking the right questions. And I do have a lot of compassion for the fact that the average person cannot hold like huge amounts of information, of new information, especially not when life is so difficult these days, depending on where you're at in the world. And so you may be experiencing wars, you may be experiencing hyperinflation, you may be experiencing just a bad economical conditions or immigration or whatever it is that you're facing. You're probably facing not an easy life. And I mean, not everyone, thankfully, but many people. And so finding the headspace, the mental space, and even the spiritual space, the time to take to learn new topics is really challenging. And so one of my missions is really to try and make it as simple as possible for people to learn new things through my program or through my articles. And so one of the topics that I really like to explore, which is, I know it's very weird because it's not a fun topic to it's like a weird hobby to read white papers of central banks and then try and deliver that in a way that is simple and easy to understand. But that is one of my hobbies. So that's one of the things I do. I kind of spy after many central banks around the world and try to kind of understand what their plans are and what they're trying to bring about. And I summarize that for people in my articles, my public speaking, my podcast. And people get a lot of value from it because who wants to read a paper from a central bank? No one has that kind of dream. And that plus brilliant guests on my podcast, just like you know, that I speak to that bring such gems to people that can really save them so much time. I mean, I think your conversation with me that we've done a few months ago got so many people interested in the whole topic of a second citizenship and you know, preserving their wealth and how they can to everything we talked about, like the flag theory and everything. And so many people asked me questions, and even if they didn't take the action to go directly to you and ask your team for consultancy, they still open their heads to something
Amazing.
else, to another solution, right? And I think that that's one of the biggest pitfalls these days. When people are overwhelmed with information, they become so tired and a little bit resigned and they go, no, that's too much. I can't handle it all. Like many people tell me, we see you talk about Bitcoin. It's so interesting, but it's too much for us to take. So, you know, can we get the shortcut of it, the TLDR somewhere? And it's hard because you can't really get things without accepting that you have to invest some of your time or money or attention to a new topic. So you really need to want to do this. But once you decide that you're putting the effort into it, there is just so many great resources out there for you to learn from. It's much easier these days to learn without like a proper school or university than it used to
100%.
be in the past. So whatever you put your mind to, you can really get great information out there today in a super decentralized way. And I love that. So I think that if we're looking at how people can not only get overwhelmed and then stopped by it, but how can they then take a positive action for their lives and their family's life, they have to put aside that resignment and start looking for solutions. Because I think that that's one of the biggest problems or pitfalls of the freedom movement or the community, where they focus too much on the problems. And I see a lot of documentaries coming
I've
out, a
seen
lot
this.
of Twitter feed, full of people highlighting the shit in the world and the problems. And I'm not saying it's not important to be aware. You want to be aware of what's coming, but you want to kind of divide your attention and time to put an end to absorbing that kind of content, and then look for solutions. Look for useful information and education that can actually help you change something meaningful in your life. Otherwise, you are wasting your time. You're in that loop, in that fear loop that they want you to be in. And that's not useful. That's not helpful.
I'm so glad you said that because that's really what we built our entire business around is being the solution to the problems. Actually, if you're on our newsletter, you listen to this podcast, you join our webinars or come to our conferences, like all day, every day, all we're doing is like, here's the solution, here's the solution, here's the solution. Here's what you can actually do. Here's how to
Yep.
actually get a bank account or brokerage account or precious metals account. Here's how to actually have passive income through international real estate. Here's how to structure it. Here's how a trust works. Here's where
Yep.
we go. This is the lawyers we work for a family foundation or for these types of things, for the insurance. Everything is only solution focused. And actually, it's great because there are many websites. There's a million, hundreds of millions of websites out there that are highlighting the problems. There's very few people who are working on the solutions. How do we actually
Absolutely.
defend ourselves from what's happening?
That's exactly why I wanted you on the show the other day, because that's exactly the kind of stuff I'm looking for my audience. I don't just want to show them what's wrong and what's bad. That's easy. I want to actually open their minds to new ways of living, new ways of being. And your newsletter is awesome in that sense. The podcast, everything, the website. I'm on the newsletter, so I see it every day. There is fresh new information about a different place
Every
in the world
single
or a
day.
different
We're
topic.
on a
Yeah.
mission.
Oh, yeah,
We
I
do
know. You
new
guys
content
create a lot
daily.
of content. And it's fine. People can choose not to be part of this, but if they do want to change something in where they live or how they handle their finances or how they created a separate investment in another area of the world, they have a resource to come to. And I think that that's what people need these days. Like, seriously, I don't want to name names, but I watched a documentary the other day with two friends of mine that was almost 2 hours. We gave it the time of day. We almost fell asleep. It doesn't matter, but it was like it was a well done kind of documentary. A lot of money spent on doing it, and the amount of people, my followers or subscribers, that have sent me that documentary telling me you got to watch that was insane. So I did. But there was nothing, zero, Mikkel, in that documentary that was showing people the light, showing them a way that they can actually help themselves from all this doom and gloom. What good is it? Why waste those 2 hours? I mean, yeah, sure, if you want to really go to the nitty gritty, the details of what is happening and how the system works, fair enough. But once you got it, it's like you don't need to spend so much more time on it. Let me TLDR it for you. Life sucks at the moment, right? Now you want to help yourself.
For sure. No, I think that it's super important what you're saying because there are different roles that we have in the world. Like I know what my role is, and it sounds like you've definitely discovered yours. And that's why I'm so thankful that you do the work that you do. So that, to be honest with you, I don't have time to read through every single central bank's digital currency outlook and plans and things like that. And then to be able to discuss with you and I want to get into the meat of it actually. Let's
Yeah.
dive into these things right now. But I have my piece of the puzzle to play, and it's like, okay, I developed the systems and the processes and the legal framework to defend about what's happening in the world, but I can't follow every single country's CBDC and what's happening and anything like that. So let's pivot a little bit and let's kind of give an overview of what is happening as we're recording this July of 2025.
Okay, no problem. So, just a bit of context. So, 81 years ago, you probably have heard of this. There was a pact or an agreement signed called the Bretton Woods Agreement in New Hampshire in the US. And that's where the countries that got together decided that the world empire is going to be the US and the US dollar is going to be the world's reserve currency. And Bretton Woods essentially architected the blueprint for how the world would operate money for the next decades. And historically, every 80 to 110 years, we see a change in world empires. At the end of every cycle, we normally experience, I mean, people remember or just think that the US has always been the world empire, but it wasn't. There was Portugal and Netherlands and many other countries that have taken the role of being the world empire and the world's reserve currency at that time. So normally it comes together. And in that switch between empires, we always experience crises, emergencies, pandemics, and wars. Sounds familiar, right? This is like what we're experiencing now. So this is what people call oftentimes the end of the fourth turning. And the real question is, will the US and the US dollar maintain their position in the next cycle? Or is it going to end and be delivered to someone else? And I personally do believe that's the intention of the US and as the world enters the truly digital age of money. Because you can argue that the money is already digital these days. If people know how the fiat system works, it really is already digital. I mean, your credit cards and bank accounts and everything, they are lines of digital code. And when you ask to transfer money from one place to another, it's not that the actual physical money is moving, it is digital. However, the big difference is that the world is turning the monetary system from a fiat system that is based on paper money to a fully digital system. And it's hard to say that it's going to be a full CBDC system, which I will define and we will talk about in a second, because it looks like the next few years are going to be spent in a process of different nation states or different blocks around the world kind of experimenting and discovering what kind of digital monetary system they want to have. It may be a CBDC, it may look a little different. In some countries, you may discover that they prefer to implement a stablecoin system, which will lead them to Bitcoin in the end as the world's reserve currency, or maybe it will be like some kind of hybrid between gold and Bitcoin because they're both sound money. And so from my research, you can definitely see that different countries or different blocks are behaving in different ways. So I'm not putting my foot down and saying we are entering into a CBDC world, period. It's not that black and white, but certain countries or certain places around the world will definitely implement CBDCs of different flavors. There's also a difference between retail CBDC and wholesale CBDC, but we won't get into that nuance at the moment. But the important thing to understand is that that new digital financial system is definitely going to be quite different than what we had experienced until today. And if you are just a user of money rather than being one of the people creating it or a government or a nation state, then you are going to feel the difference, but the way you're going to feel it is mostly in the level of control and surveillance that the government may have on your financial transactions and your financial freedom. And now you can say that, I mean, I'm always taking both sides, right? So you can say that we already don't have privacy or financial freedom really in the West because governments are able to debank us, right? Or to kind of freeze our bank accounts or surveil and ask for the bank to freeze certain transactions or ask us to deliver documentation or reasons for why we want to get our money out of the bank and things like that. So to a large extent we are already experiencing, especially in the US, we're experiencing a level of surveillance and control by the government. And if the government really wants to control what we do with our money, it can and put some restrictions on that. But with CBDCs, it becomes easier. So what is CBDCs? So CBDCs are central bank digital currencies. The big difference here is central bank. So today, your relationship, you, Mikkel, for example, when you hold cash money in your wallet, you have a direct relationship with your central bank, because the central bank is the one that is issuing that cash money and giving it to you. And that is a liability, a direct liability of the central bank. And that is different from the money that you have in your bank account in the commercial bank. Okay. So today, this is your way of having a direct relationship with the central bank. When we're talking about CBDCs, that is a way for the central bank to issue a credit or a token directly and give it to you as well as your cash, right? But it's just digital. Now, one of the things the central bankers really like doing is fooling people by making them think that CBDCs are just digital cash. They're not. I mean, CBDCs are as far away from cash as can be, because they are definitely not private, and cash, physical cash, does give you a level of privacy because people cannot know what you do with your cash when you transact it, on the most part. With CBDCs, they can know exactly what you do, when and where, and what you use your money on. And they have the capabilities to use geofencing on it, so telling you where you can use your money in a certain kilometer radius around your house or a neighborhood or even a city or a state, and you cannot use it elsewhere, for example. They can program the money, so to tell you that you can use it for certain things and you cannot use it for others, right? You can buy meat in a certain quota, you can use a certain level of money for petrol or gas, or how much can you travel overseas on a plane, because this is related to carbon emissions. I mean, there is so much that they can do if they want. They can just program all these rules into the protocol and just forbid you from doing certain things or allow you to do them. And the last thing is they can switch on and off digital wallets remotely. So those capabilities are native in the CBDC technology, and they exist there. The only question would be, would a certain central bank or government decide to use them? So they may start off being very nice and kind, and they will not use these things, and they will just make you feel like it's another credit card or another payment app that you can just pay very quickly, immediately, and you see the balance, and everything is very digital, and it's a lot of fun, and there's nothing harmful in it. And then when they want to, let's say there is now hyperinflation, or there's a war, or there's another emergency, or whatever, just like we had during COVID, they will pull out that emergency act and will decide that from now they can tell you what to use it for and when and how much, etc. They're talking about different quotas of how much CBDCs you can use you can hold in your wallet, and you can't go over a certain quota. Like, they can do many things, and so we don't know when they can go all draconian on us, but the capability is there, and that's what's important to know. Now, when we look at the change that we are now going through. So this decade, 2020 to 2030, in my opinion, is the decade that we are transitioning from one monetary system to the next, from one world empire to the next, from one treasury asset to the next. And I do believe, as I said, that the US wants to or intends to continue holding their dominance around the world. And they just want to do that by being the world empire that is the first to implement a fully digital infrastructure on the monetary system, just like they did Bretton Woods and became the empire in 1944. They want to do it again. I think by the end of this decade, we're going to see Bretton Woods 2.0 happening again in the US with different trade agreements, just like we've seen Trump already starting to do, etc. So I think that that's going to happen soon. I do believe, though, that the US has enough wisdom to choose Bitcoin as their preferred reserve asset rather than CBDCs. Although one can say that if you are regulating your financial system so much, just like the US is doing with the first the Patriot Act, and then the why am I blanking? the Bank Secrecy Act, and now the Stablecoin Act. There are so many different types of regulations and financial controls in place to really detail how the financial institutions can and should use monetary instruments in the US. So they are trying to tame this beast called Bitcoin as much as they can. It's quite difficult because it's hard to control it, but they are doing a pretty good job in putting people under, the understanding that you need to go through either ETFs or KYC Bitcoin through different exchanges, etc. And you have to report and you have to pay capital gains tax and different things like that. So it's going in a certain trajectory. It's soon to determine what will happen. It's too early to determine what will happen with Bitcoin in the US, but it's definitely very interesting to put an eye on it because it may dictate for the rest of the world where things are heading. Now, when we look at the EU in
Well,
comparison
let's pause
to,
for a second before we get
okay,
into the EU, because I've got
okay,
a couple
sure.
of follow-up pieces here, because there's already, like, my head is already spinning. And I think it's an excellent synopsis of kind of like bringing us up to date. One of the
Okay.
biggest things for CBDCs that I am most afraid of, and I would like your opinion on, is the expiration date that they would be able to put in. I think that this is the most terrifying, because what I see is they want to keep people poverty stricken. They want to keep people, um, they want to keep families from inheriting and passing on and growing wealth from generation to generation. And I think that that is a mechanism that they're going to be able to really push that agenda through, where if they can say, all right, you have uh, you can have this money, but it's only going to last 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, or something like that. Or you can only, like you said, spend it on vegetables, but not on meat, because meat is bad, and carnivores are bad people, and cow farts and all of this kinds of nonsense. Then they can do this. But what is your opinion on expiration
The
of money?
expiration date. Right. So we already see death taxes and wealth taxes in different parts of the world. And so with CBDCs, it just becomes easier to enforce that because you can definitely put in the program just a rule that says that, if there's a death certificate, put an expiry date on the funds or deliver the funds to the government, like seize the money basically. That is becoming super easy with what's called a smart contract, which is an Ethereum. Like a lot of people that are in crypto are familiar with that term from Ethereum or other coins, because it's basically just I mean, I'm a computer programmer in the past, so I can tell you that it's a simple computer program saying if then, if the person passes away, there is a legitimate death certificate, pass the money onto or close the wallet or seize the money or expire the date on it. So it's super easy to implement in terms of technology. In terms of real life scenarios and use cases, will they do it? Look, if they're already doing it today with taxes, and this system that is fully digital is supposed to improve things for the state or for the government, then why wouldn't they do it? Right? And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I don't see a reason why they wouldn't use expiry dates,
Exactly.
right? At the same time, you got to remember that the the this is my opinion. The probability that they will go in the full dystopian route is quite low. And I'll give an example. So the central banker of Thailand, okay, he spoke out at a conference in Singapore a few months ago. I listened to his fireside chat for 1 hour. I saved you the time to do that. But basically, what he said is, we have played around with a lot of different pilots for retail CBDCs. One of them included, and this is something that I had covered in some of my public speaking, I'd covered that pilot in Thailand, and I showed how they did a pilot of 6 months with 10,000 people, where they gave them 10,000 baht each, which is about $250. It's quite a bit of money for the average Thai. and it had an expiration date of 6 months on it and a geofencing of 4 kilometers around their place of living. So they could use that free money that they got, but they could use it under certain conditions. And obviously, the 10,000 people that participated were happy. Now, here's the caveat. They did not have the full retail CBDC program ready when they started the pilot. So instead of doing it under the technological solution that they're supposed to do it on, they simply just handed out the money to people in cash. But it was supposed to be, yeah, it was emulating that use case of a retail CBDC pilot. And then they wanted to extend it and do a larger pilot for millions of people. I think it was 50 million, or I don't remember, 13 million, like a lot of people that would participate in the second round, which was based on the first round, again, with free money, geofencing, expiry date, the whole thing. Even though they didn't finalize this plan, they did declare their intention to do this pilot, and they listed those features of expiry date and geofencing and the whole thing. Now, there was quite a bit of pushback. I was part of it, I admit it, because I went throughout the world in different conferences and told people that that's what they want to do. And then the videos of these use cases that I put out there became viral. And so many people saw them. And then you get the central banker of Thailand sitting in this conference in Singapore a few months ago and telling the guy that is interviewing him, we played around with those pilots and we decided to stop them because of the pushback we got. It has topics of, privacy invasion and whatnot. Like, that's what he said. I can send you the video. It's quite funny.
Please,
And we
please.
decided not to go the retail CBDC route, but instead we're implementing wholesale CBDC, which is a little bit softer. So I really do believe that they are listening and they know that people will revolt if they take the fully dystopian route, just like they didn't succeed fully with COVID. Just like you said, many people woke up, many people stood up against it. Climate is a bit similar. People are kind of smelling the bullshit and not buying it. And so I really believe that they're being careful and they're going to tiptoe their way around to this new monetary system without implementing all these draconian measures, because we're watchdogs. Like, people are now more awake and they're seeing and they're talking about it. So I don't
100%.
think they're going to go down that route, but it is definitely in, like, the capability is there. But you still may have, when we get to the EU, I will let you ask another question, but when
Okay.
we
Because
get to the
I'm
EU, you
chopping at
will,
the bit here. I've got another
yeah,
question for you.
China and EU, I think they will implement a lot of draconian shit.
Well, see, I'm looking at this and going, okay, there's food stamps out there, and they've been
Yeah.
floating these ideas of universal basic income, UBI. And it's
Yep.
like, oh, that sounds like a really good delivery mechanism for getting CBDCs in a ridiculous amount of people's hands,
You are
like
spot
really
on,
fast.
Mikkel. You are spot on, because throughout all my horizontal research between countries, this is a recurring theme. You see nation states, their first pilots are always about subsidies and about and about universal basic income. So they take like a group of, let's say, girls, like 1,000 girls that are supposed to get subsidies because of, like, really virtuous reasons. You cannot say that they don't have like a good intention. They need to help those girls, but they decide to implement the retail CBDC pilot on this group of 1,000 girls. Why? Because it's easiest to do it with people who are the most poor and have the hardest conditions of living, and let's take advantage of it because they need the money and they cannot resist it. They will not tell the government, no, no, I'm not going to take your $1,000. Thank you very much, dear Prime Minister. So they start where it's easy, and that is a recurring theme. And so, yeah, in certain places around the world, I'm afraid it is going to be implemented. So you really need to be more educated and see the country that you want to live in, what kind of policy does it have about CBDCs and about digital money or digital currencies. So,
Yeah,
by
I'm
the way,
looking at these
Thailand
things.
like softening. I'll just finish the example of Thailand. Like as they are softening their approach and pulling back away from retail CBDCs, they did decide to embark on a pilot program in the island of Phuket for Bitcoin. So now they are experimenting with Bitcoin, and they also have experimentations with stablecoins. So they're trying everything. And eventually, I think in the next 2 to 3 years, or maybe by the end of the decade, different nation states will land on the different types of solutions that they prefer the most. But in the next few years, we're going to see a lot of experimentations. And so I think you got to be very smart with the type of country that you're going to move to or want to try to live in. Just check what kind of monetary policy they have in place, whether it's CBDCs or Bitcoin or stable coins, because they're going to be playing with all of these. So I think Thailand is a pretty good place to try it out now, because if they're making Bitcoin one of their allowed, they did also say recently, I forgot to mention that they're taking capital gains tax off of Bitcoin for the next 5 years. So,
Oh, that
if you're on a Bitcoin standard, you may want to explore that too. But, just research. Yeah. So,
I met the central banker of Georgia when I was speaking at a conference 2 years ago, and he gave a 60-minute presentation. And it was quite funny because he really couldn't read the room at all. It was literally like 100, 150 libertarians in a room. And he is legit bragging to the group about the technological progress that the government of Georgia has made in CBDCs and all these things. And like it was literally like 150 libertarians with their jaw just like I just like could
they
on the floor,
really
could
don't
not
get
believe it.
it.
Yeah, it's
I
like
must tell
you
you,
folks
I've been
don't
to
even know
some
what you're doing.
meetups, like face to face with central bankers in Israel, sat in the room with them, listened to them bragging about what they're doing. And then in the end of the session, I raise my hand and I give my comments or questions, and they don't know how to answer me. They don't know. And, one of them went to the familiar approach of just going completely ridiculing me, and he was like, some of the things you're saying are correct, but most of it is completely nonsense. And I'm like, yeah, really, can you please tell me what was nonsense in what I was
Exactly.
what I was saying? And he's like, no, no, it's okay. Later you can come to me and I'll tell you. And obviously it wasn't nonsense because I was quoting real things that are happening around the world. I was probably more knowledgeable than him on some of the things I said. But they
Guaranteed.
really don't think that they are doing anything wrong. For them, they are really trying to improve people's lives. And because they are living in such an incentive structure, that just like the doctors during COVID, right? That most of them are probably not bad doctors. They're just like living in such a system that has them believe that what they do is actually good, and they don't bother to read the damn scientific research that came out, and to do the actual validation work themselves. They're leaving it to other experts to tell them what's right and wrong. And it's the same with central bankers. Some of them are not bad people. They're really just in that incentive loop structure that has them think that what they're doing is okay without really thinking. And maybe I can give you another example for the central banker of Singapore, talking about the fact that when they're looking at their CBDC platform, they understand that there is already a public blockchain that exists out there that they can use. And he's referring to Bitcoin for the past 15 years. But you can't really expect us to use that because this is completely open and permissionless. And then when you look at the, he said that, and then when you look at the other side,
Amazing.
you see that there are many private blockchains that we can use, but the private ones don't have the network. Like he means the network effect, that people are not there. And so we decided to land somewhere in the middle and create this public permissioned blockchain. And so they're building it from scratch, and they called the project that they're working on Global Layer One. And it's a multi-year project for hundreds of millions of dollars to kind of re-architect and rebuild, or maybe reinvent the wheel of a layer one architecture that will allow them to do cross-border payments and settlements between countries. And that's what the Bitcoin blockchain already does. It's global. It's working for the past 15 years. It's never been down. It's as secure as can be. But they can't use it because it's permissionless, they can't control it and they know it. So they're building something new. So good luck with that, What can we say?
Well, I remember a conversation with my very dear friend Paul Rosenberg, who some say probably inspired the creation of Bitcoin with his book A Lodging of Wayfaring Men. And I remember having a conversation with him, and he was saying, listen, if you are a tech worker, if you work in IT, if you have any of these things, do not be working on CBDCs whatsoever.
Right.
Tell all of your network, every person you ever met, every friend you've ever had, your university, computer scientists, people you went to university with, everybody stop working on these projects. Don't get caught by golden handcuffs or take these bribes or anything like this or these signing bonuses. Don't work on it. You're enslaving humanity. And when he told me that, I was like, I absolutely agree with that. Like we all have to stop and put down our feet because these things are being developed, but we need to drag our heels as much as possible and get the word out on all of these types of things.
So you were asking me before we went online about a company called Ripple or with their coin called XRP. And I think that is a perfect time to mention them because what people don't know about Ripple, and a lot of people in the so-called freedom movement really appreciate this company or this coin, this token. But what they don't know is that Ripple has developed a white label platform for governments and central banks to create CBDCs on. And they've been working with more than 6 or 7 central banks around the world, giving them their platform for their CBDCs. So if you're a freedom lover, how can you empower a company that is creating CBDCs? So I have a whole thread about Ripple or XRP. I may send you the link so you can put it down there so people can see them in their promotional videos actually telling the world how this is the perfect platform to launch your CBDC on. And they want to hold XRP. So, if you're an ideologist like us, then you cannot empower a company like that. Not to mention the fact that XRP is another centralized coin, and the people that have created it, the company Ripple, can just continue to issue as much as they want. And that is one of the basic principles about money that people don't get because they don't spend the time to learn about money. But if they
100%.
did, they would know that when you can issue as much as you want of any type of money or any type of coin, then you're basically debasing everyone that is using that currency. And that's what Bitcoin is doing, which is super different than any other coin. Bitcoin has a cap of 21 million coins and cannot be printed any more of or issued any more of. And XRP and all the other cryptocurrencies can be printed as much as they want, and they're debasing you. So all those that are holding the dream that one day XRP is going to be worth so much money, it's a dream. And people have been dreaming it for the past 7 or 8 years. They've been saying this. This is not new. If you've just been exposed to XRP and you think you've just discovered, America, you haven't. This is, Ripple is a company that has great marketing. And me talking as an ex-marketeer for 20 years, I'm telling you, they are excellent at marketing. But that's what they do. And they have a major psyop going on to get all the freedom movement falling for that trap because the freedom movement is too lazy to learn about money. So if they had just spent a bit of time to learn about the basic principles of the fiat monetary system, which are based on inflation and are based on fractional reserve banking, and that you can just create more and more of what you've got and then make everyone else poor, then you would understand that XRP and all the other coins are scams basically, and they're working and they operate in the same exact way. And Bitcoin is the only one that is different in that sense. So there are
Why is
more
it that
more
all new
claims to
people to
make, but I think
crypto
that's enough. Huh?
why is it that all new people to crypto, like one of the first ones they want to jump on
I
is
know why.
XRP? It's like it's
Because it's
just
cheap. And they
it's
think that if they
so
buy it at
scammy.
0.05 cents, they can become rich when it goes to $100. They want to do what Bitcoin has done once. But there are no free lunches. You actually need to hold on to sound money. So it's either gold or Bitcoin. Because if it's not sound money and it can be printed more and more of, then you're going to be debased. It doesn't matter how cheap it is. And the fact that Bitcoin is $100,000 or more and gold is $3,000 or more, it doesn't matter because you buy as much as you can afford, and it will
Exactly.
go up because it's sound money. That it's that easy. Like it's a mathematical certainty in the long run, not in the daily. There is obviously fluctuation in the short term, but in the long term, 4 year cycle, of course, it will go up.
It's one of those ones that every time I hear someone new to crypto come in, like I got into Bitcoin in 2016. I mean, I got into it. This podcast, when I started this podcast in 2017, this could have been a Bitcoin podcast, but I kind of looked at what my background is when I started down this route, and I was like, okay, I've got a year of Bitcoin under my belt, and I was buying Bitcoin at three figures, and I still should I say this online? Yeah, I still own Bitcoin from when I was buying it at three figures.
Amazing.
And
Amazing.
this could have been a Bitcoin only podcast, but I looked at my background. It was like, okay, I have this huge background in immigration and banking and like offshore banking and corporate structures and stuff. So that's why I went into this. But we do come back to Bitcoin
And I
over and
think
over and
you
over
made
again.
such a smart decision, Mikkel, because you know the, your expertise. There are not many people that can bring to the table everything that you bring, and so there are so many people that can do. Sorry. Bitcoin podcasts, you can do so much more. So I think it's super good that you did what you did. And the funny thing is, in a decade or two, all these Bitcoin podcasts, they will no longer be Bitcoin podcasts. They will just be podcasts because money will be Bitcoin. And so all these
Fair
people will
enough. Fair
just
enough.
find their niche inside the
Fair.
world of what they want to talk about. So you were early in that sense.
Okay, let's dive into the Eurozone, which
Right.
I
So
mean, I'm going to
yeah.
go on record. And before you even say anything, I just think
Yep.
that the European Union is an absolute dumpster fire on every single level, politically, um, socially, like the socialism that is there. Like it is just unbelievable. So I just want to put that out because we were just
Yeah.
writing an article on what's going on in Portugal right now on the immigration front, and now Portugal wants to take these people who have had the golden visa and were promised that they could become Portuguese citizens after 5 years. And as soon as they got close to that 5 year mark, now they're doubling it and they're saying 10 years. And it's the same type of thing. So they
You
always move the goalposts.
serious?
They promise and promise and promise and promise all of these types of things. Oh, move to Portugal. It's a tax-free country. 5 years, you're going to get your citizenship, yada, yada, yada. As soon as it gets close to the 5 years, they cancel their non-habitual tax residency. They move the citizenship to 10 years. What do you think is going to happen when they get to 10 years? They're just going to constantly move the goalpost on all of
Why
these
do
types
they
of
do
things
that? What's
because
their
they hate you and they're just monsters. And it's not just Portugal. I'm picking on Portugal in this
yeah.
example, but I mean over like I have tons of European friends and European clients that I'm not saying I don't like the people are incredible, but I mean what is going on in the governments there is fucking atrocious.
So the ECB, the European Central Bank, has been experimenting with CBDCs for a few good years now. This is not new. But what is new is that they formally announced that they are actually launching their CBDC platform, which is called the Digital Euro, in 3 months from now. So October 2025 is when it's going to be launched. And now it doesn't mean that in October 2025, you're going to see all hundreds of millions of the EU citizens walking around with a CBDC wallet. No, it's going to take time. But they did say that the period of time is 2 to 2.5 years to roll out that platform after legislation is finalized. So now they're in that process of getting the legislation finalized. Christine Lagarde has already announced that October 2025 it's starting. The estimated cost of this project is about 430 million euros for infrastructure and operations over 10 to 15 years, excluding internal ledger development costs. And all these words that may sound familiar to those of you who are in crypto or Bitcoin, Ledger and Layer One, these are all things that Bitcoin already has, and they are seriously just reinventing the wheel, trying to create them again. But they have to because they need central control. They need to centralize power. Um, okay, what else? Recently, we have seen the EU discussing military funding. And so I don't know if it's a coincidence or not a coincidence, but von der Leyen, Ursula von der Leyen, who is the president of the European Council, had announced a program called Rearm Europe, which is a plan that requires 800 billion euros. And another interesting thing she announced, Savings and Investments Union, which aims to redirect or mobilize 10 trillion euros in private savings to fund military expansion. So European citizens that have savings and deposits sitting there with euros in them, fiat euros, their money not directly is going to be taken, I believe, and then put for war purposes. But what they will do is reallocate or misallocate, more accurately, the pension funds that have that private money invested in other vehicles. They're going to kind of turn around that investment vehicle and invest it into war and military industrial complex and all these things that we love and appreciate as libertarians.
I'll
So
pause for a second because I can tell you
yeah,
another mechanism that they can use and probably most likely will use. They can use private savings as collateral for taking out loans.
yep,
And if you've read The Great Taking, which I have
yes,
spoken to
absolutely.
David Webb, I've been on a call with David Webb and my friend Doug Casey and a couple of other really, really smart hedge fund managers and securities lawyers and stuff like that. We went through everything line by line. And
Yep,
these really exist. All the laws that he talks about in The
absolutely.
Great Taking, they absolutely exist. And how much more, actually, it's not even as difficult for going to the clearinghouses, going to the banks themselves and using private deposits as backstops for loans that then they go and use on things like this to fund, war with the boogeyman.
1,000%. Now, what they give as their official justification or excuse for launching the digital euro is that they see crypto as a threat and aim to counter US adoption. Okay, so Reuters, for example, reports that the EU banks fear losing revenue as decentralized solutions gain traction. They actually say it. Response to the US stablecoins. So the US is progressing very quickly to legalize and formalize and normalize stablecoins, which are digital coins that are pegged one-to-one normally to the dollar, but it can be to any fiat currency. But basically, the US abandons its plans for CBDCs, and the ECB sees these stablecoins and the legislation around it as a rising alternative, positioning the digital euro as Europe's answer to the stablecoins. So Europe is kind of, we have to do this very, very fast because Trump is going for his stablecoins very, very fast. So that's kind of their excuse. So they're basically losing fees and clients when they're looking at decentralized coins or crypto coins. And they're also losing fees and clients when you're looking at big tech. So Apple Pay, Google Pay, and any other future payment mechanism from a that resides in a country outside of the EU, for them is a threat. So they're saying we have to quickly create a payment mechanism that is native to the EU because we're so threatened by everything else that is outside of the EU. Now the digital euro is going to come in and protect you, dear citizen. Don't worry. And so the funniest argument that they make for the digital euro is what's called the essential infrastructure argument. There's a guy in the ECB, the European Central Bank. His name is Piero Cipollone, and he claims that the digital euro is necessary, comparing it to water or electricity, which are essential services that should be controlled locally. However, the EU itself depends on foreign sources for energy and water resources. So that's a complete bullshit. But
What a bunch
I
of
swear to
drivel. That's
God,
hilarious. That's
I
amazing.
swear to
I wonder if
God,
people like
it's from
actually
an
listen to
interview
the
with him.
rubbish. Yeah, I wonder if people actually like listen to themselves speak and the absolute rubbish
Yeah.
that comes out of their mouth.
They
fucking
go, it's
hypocrite.
essential infrastructure, just like water and electricity. But hold on, aren't we getting our water and electricity from elsewhere too? Like, what the flip?
That's
So yeah,
hilarious.
and then they had a survey. They had many surveys, but one of them shows very low public interest. The ECB did a poll for 19,000 Europeans across 11 eurozones. 11 eurozone countries, and most of them showed no need for a digital euro, no desire for a digital euro. And the Europeans at the same time on that poll showed them that they are quite open to propaganda, because the survey found that people become more receptive to CBDCs after watching promotional videos. And so, what a coincidence, since late 2024, the ECB has ramped up content to reshape public perception through videos. They have so many different videos. If you go to the ECB Twitter page and you click on media, you will see all the promotional videos that they do to promote the digital euro. And it's like they're talking to idiots, seriously. And I guess people are idiots if that's the kind of content they do. I don't know. The other thing that they are counting on is integration. And this is where it becomes interesting, because it's like the linking, for me, it's the linking point to China. So integration is key. Europeans have a strong preference for existing payment methods and see no real benefit in a new type of payment system. This is a quote from the survey they did. So while this finding, it sounds like a very positive pushback, I think it can be served as a precursor to a tactic of technological integrations. Kind of, if you can't beat them, join them. Similarly to what China did with their CBDCs, with their ECNY. So China, for a few years, have been rolling out their ECNY, their retail CBDC solution, and the response for it was pretty bad. And they tried in many different ways and tactics. They gave free money, they improved the app all the time, they did many, many things like airdrop, whatever. It did not work. A lot of marketing campaigns, etc. And so recently, I think it was in the last 1 or 2 years, they've decided to go through the path of integration. So they took all the different shopping apps and travel apps and different types of consumer apps in China. And you know how it is in China. The government tells you have to do it. So they have integrated the ECNY in the background of those apps. So meaning when you come to pay to a piece of clothing or food or whatever it is, travel, you can choose ECNY as another type of payment method. And they integrated also with Alipay and WeChat Pay, which are the two most popular payment methods in China. And so you can't beat them, join them. They integrated with them, they're part of their plans. And now they are boasting and saying that the ECNY platform has more than 800 million active wallets on it. So, you know, what a great way of getting to that number, right? And so the EU is kind of taking a similar approach. They're saying that while the Europeans really don't see a reason why they need the digital euro, they will be happy with their existing payment methods, and that's why they'll probably integrate into, you know, the wearables, the credit cards, all the payment apps. And Israel have done the same, has said the same thing. So we're going to integrate with all the existing payment apps, so that for you, dear Mikkel, it's going to be as seamless as possible. You're not going to notice the difference. It's just going to
Wow.
be there in the background, right? Yeah, I mean, there are a few more details, but basically, I think the biggest hoax that we've already covered is the fact that they call it a digital cash. And you just got to be minded and really educated to understand that this is just part of the propaganda. It is not cash in any way. It is really an enforcement capability. So, a technological kind of capability. Yeah, there's more details, but I think it's kind of clear. I think the last thing I would add is just that the EU has a carbon reduction goal by 2030 of 55% less carbon emissions. And so if we're looking at that as another driver for why they would want to accelerate the digital euro and push it out there, is because they may want to use that mechanism in order to enforce the reduction of carbon emissions in the EU. They have really ambitious goals. And I don't know, I wish they fail, but I don't know how serious they are about making it happen by 2030. If they are, they may use the CBDC as a tool to enforce that, the digital euro. So, and that's quite easy to do.
I just keep thinking to myself as you're speaking, how fortunate, how lucky, um, how blessed I am to be living in Panama. Panama is a country with no central bank. We do not have a central bank in this country. It's a Bitcoin forward looking country. You can pay your taxes in Bitcoin, your property taxes. They want to start taxing, they want to start taking fees for the Panama Canal in Bitcoin. The mayor here in Panama City, where I am, is like 36 years old. He's a young guy. He's very tech first, very pro Bitcoin. Amazing guy. He lives literally 3 minutes from my house. Um, or places like El Salvador and the amazing work that they're doing, and other places around the world which are taking a completely
Costa
different
Rica next
approach.
to you also has a nice Guatemala has a nice circular economy for Bitcoin. There are a lot of places in Central America that are kind of leapfrogging. The just like in Africa where they leapfrog the internet. Sorry, with going straight to like mobile phones instead of having
Mhm.
PCs and laptops and whatever. They all have mobile phones. It's a bit similar in Central America and some places also in Latin America and South America, where they are leapfrogging. They don't have a bank account and they go directly to like digital currencies, but not CBDCs. So
Exactly.
there are rays of light, but you really need to be vigilant and learn a little bit. Do your research about what type of monetary instrument is going to be implemented and where. You have more than 70 projects today for stablecoins in different countries around the world. In Asia, you have it in Cambodia, in Thailand, in Hong Kong, in Singapore. You have projects for Bitcoin in many different countries around the world. You have projects for CBDCs around the world. So, there are websites out there that have databases that are aggregating information about CBDCs. And it's important for your audience to know that when you type CBDC tracker, you may find different solutions or different results. Sorry. The one you want to go to is Human Rights Foundation, the
Yep.
HRF tracker. That's the good one. That's the one on our side, right? The libertarians, the ones that have an open mind, and they will report. You will see when you click on a certain country, you will get all the information about their CBDC pilots and history and evolution and all that. And you will see that they also report about human rights violations and what kind of overreach the government has with their citizens. And so you can really educate yourself quite quickly by visiting their website about what kind of CBDC policy is going to come into play in different countries.
Amazing. Efrat, fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. If my audience wants to get a hold of you, if they want to find out more about what you do, where can we send them?
I think my Twitter is the best place. There is one link there on my Twitter that will give you everything else, my podcast, my Substack, and all my other social media channels.
Amazing. And I will make sure to put the links for that and everything else that we talked about in this episode under Efrat's episode at expatmoneyshow.com. You're going to be able to find it on there or on your favorite podcasting application. Efrat, have a wonderful rest of the day and keep up the good work
Thank
because
you.
it is very, very needed. We need watchmen or watchwomen out there keeping an eye on what's happening.
I will do that. And thank you for what you do, Mikkel. It's great talking to you.